What if I told you most of your suffering isn't caused by the world, but by your own thoughts about it? Be honest. How many times have you sat alone in a quiet room, only to realize that the loudest thing in your life is your own mind? You replay a conversation from earlier today. You analyze what they meant when they said, "Oh, I'm fine." You wonder if you made the wrong decision 2 weeks ago, or if you'll regret something next month. You start thinking about the future, then circle back to the past, then fixate on the tiniest details in the present. You call it preparation. You call it being careful or deep. But if you're honest, it feels more like mental drowning. This is overthinking, and it's a silent tormentor. It doesn't scream, it whispers constantly. And because the noise lives inside you, it becomes harder and harder to separate yourself from your suffering. You don't feel clarity. You don't feel peace. You just feel stuck. In Stoic terms, this is the mind out of harmony with nature. It's a mind attempting to control the uncontrollable, a mind unwilling to let things be. But here's the truth the Stoics lived by: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. The problem isn't that you think. The problem is that you never trained yourself how to think. Most people never do. They believe their thoughts by default. They confuse movement with progress. They spend hours lost in internal loops and call it being responsible. But Marcus didn't do that. Seneca didn't do that. Epictetus taught his students the opposite. The Stoics didn't try to silence their minds. They sharpened them. They learned how to question, to filter, to prioritize, to take control of their mental life, the same way an athlete takes control of their body, through deliberate daily effort. So if you find yourself overthinking everything, if your peace is constantly hijacked by what-if scenarios, replayed conversations, and imagined disasters, this video is your antidote. We'll walk through 5 powerful Stoic principles that will help you retrain your mental habits, reclaim your emotional balance, and finally experience the stillness your soul has been seeking. You won't silence your mind through force. You'll calm it through mastery. Overthinking is not just excessive thought, it is misplaced belief. You begin to suffer the moment you mistake your thoughts for facts, when an internal narrative born in silence is granted the authority of truth. The Stoics had a word for this automatic acceptance of thought: assent. Every moment of the day, your mind is flooded with impressions. Someone looks at you a certain way. You get an email with a vague subject line. A memory pops up from something you said 3 years ago. And in a split second, you assign meaning. They don't like me. Something is wrong. I'm not enough. Without even realizing it, you've agreed with the impression. You've said yes to a shadow. You've handed over your peace to a mental ghost. This is where overthinking begins, because the mind, once it finds a crack in your awareness, will widen it. What starts as a fleeting doubt becomes a cascade of imagined scenarios. A strange look becomes rejection. A late reply becomes abandonment. A mistake becomes identity. You're no longer responding to life. You're reacting to thoughts about life. And the worst part, it feels rational. The internal noise is so familiar, so persistent, that you assume it's the voice of reason. But it isn't. It's just the voice that's been left unchallenged. The Stoics urge you to stop, to interrupt the cycle. Marcus Aurelius reminds himself in Meditations that our judgments, not external events, are the root of most suffering. That we must learn to separate what happens from what we tell ourselves about what happens. It is not the strange look that disturbs you, it's the meaning you assign to it. It's not the silence that hurts, It's the story you attach to it. It's not the future that frightens you, it's your desperate need to control it. But once you pause, once you observe the thought without fusing with it, you gain power, because now you're not inside the storm, you're watching it. This is what Epictetus meant when he said, "It's not events that disturb people, it's their judgments about them." Let's ground this in something practical. The next time you catch yourself spiraling, whether it's over something you said or something that might happen, do this. Write the thought down, make it visible, give it form, label it. Say to yourself, this is just a thought, not a fact, not a command, just a mental event. Interrogate it. Ask, is this always true? Is there any proof? What's another way to interpret this? What's within my control here? Refocus on what's real. Come back to the present moment. Your breath, your posture, the work in front of you. This process might feel slow at first, but over time it becomes reflexive. The mind begins to recognize its own tricks. The overthinking loses its grip. And more importantly, you begin to live in reality again. Think of the mind like a wild animal. It doesn't respond to force or fear. It responds to consistent training. Each time you question a thought instead of obeying it, you are rewiring your relationship with yourself. You're becoming not just someone who thinks, but someone who chooses how to think. This is the heart of Stoic mental discipline, not to feel nothing, not to suppress everything, but to hold your thoughts at a distance long enough to decide, does this deserve a place in my mind? Most won't. Most are just noise. And once you learn to tell the difference between a passing shadow and a guiding truth, the storm of overthinking begins to break. Not because the mind is finally silent, but because you are finally listening to something deeper. Have you ever noticed that overthinking strikes hardest when you're doing nothing? You're lying in bed, or pacing around your room, or scrolling endlessly through your phone, not really reading, not really present. And suddenly your mind becomes a theater for imaginary disasters, conversations you wish went differently, futures you don't know how to control, regrets you never resolved. This is not a coincidence. It's a law of the psyche. The idle mind becomes a battlefield. Seneca warned us of this. In his letters, he often spoke of the dangers of drifting through life without direction. He saw clearly that the mind is never neutral. If it's not anchored in something deliberate, it will invent problems just to stay busy. To be everywhere is to be nowhere, he wrote. And nowhere is where overthinking thrives. We tend to imagine that the cure to mental exhaustion is rest. But what we call rest is often just inactivity. We stop moving, but the mind doesn't. It spins faster in the vacuum. This is why overthinking is so common at night. The world gets quiet, the distractions stop, and suddenly you're alone with everything you've been avoiding all day. The Stoics believed that the answer to this wasn't to numb the mind, but to engage it with purpose. Let's be clear, purpose doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be a lifelong mission or a massive goal. It can be as simple as doing the next right thing, cleaning your space, finishing a task, practicing your craft, because what matters is not what you do, but why you do it. Seneca believed that we are often most tormented, not by what happens, but by the energy we misdirect. Overthinking is energy with nowhere to land, and so it turns inward. It's the mental equivalent of pacing in circles. You're moving, you're expending effort, but you're going nowhere. To break this pattern, you must replace empty motion with intentional momentum. Take this example. You've been putting off a hard decision, maybe a career move, or ending a relationship, or starting something new. And so you think about it. Constantly, you run every possible scenario. You analyze from every angle, but the decision doesn't get easier. It gets heavier. Why? Because thinking is not the same as doing, and clarity is rarely found through mental loops. The Stoics would say, stop imagining the entire road, just take the next step. Right now, this is the power of action, not as a solution to every problem, but as an antidote to paralysis. Let's bring this to the ground. Here's how to apply this principle. Step 1. Identify the void. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding right now? It might be a task you don't want to face, a truth you don't want to confront, a change you're not ready to make. That avoidance creates a vacuum, and overthinking rushes in to fill the space. Step 2. Interrupt the spiral with motion. Even the smallest act can shift your state. Fold your clothes, organize your desk, respond to one message you've been ignoring. Go for a 5-minute walk without headphones. The mind obeys the body more than we realize. When the body moves with intention, the mind follows. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. In other words, begin. Don't wait to feel ready. Begin anyway. Step 3. Reclaim time with structure. A disorganized day is fertile ground for overthinking. When your schedule is loose, your mind becomes a playground for distraction and doubt. But when your time is structured with purpose, even loosely, the mind is occupied with direction. This isn't about being rigid or robotic. It's about giving your energy a container, so it doesn't leak into every mental crack. The Stoics valued discipline not as punishment, but as freedom. The disciplined life is the liberated life, because your time belongs to you, not to your impulses. Step 4. Work for the sake of the work. Here's where the Stoic view of action differs from the modern hustle mentality. They didn't act just to chase results. They acted out of virtue. They believed in working for the sake of the work itself, because doing something well, doing something mindfully, is an end in itself. Marcus Aurelius said, do your job. Do it right. The rest doesn't matter. This mindset kills overthinking at the root. Because now, you're not obsessing over what people will think, or how it might turn out, or whether it'll succeed. You're focused on the one thing that's always in your control, the integrity of your effort. Overthinking will not be solved by more thinking. It is solved through engagement, through meaningful, grounded, intentional action. So if you find yourself spiraling, ask, what's the smallest thing I can do right now that aligns with my values? Then do that. And when it's done, do the next thing. Because the mind that is occupied with purpose has no room left for useless worry. The truth is, you don't need to escape your thoughts. You need to outrun them with action that matters. That is the Stoic path. Not stillness by silence, but stillness through motion with meaning. Let's be honest. Much of your overthinking isn't about reflection, it's about control. You think in circles because you're trying to predict an outcome, to manipulate a result, to undo something that's already done, or to force clarity where there is only uncertainty. The mind panics in the presence of powerlessness, and in that panic it creates illusion after illusion. If I replay this enough times, I'll figure out what I should have said. If I obsess over this enough, I can stop something bad from happening. If I just think harder, I can make the future obey me. But the Stoics knew that this is the seed of all anxiety, this desperate resistance to the nature of things. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. Epictetus said, It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. That single line contains an entire philosophy, because at the core of Stoicism is one unshakable truth. There is what you can control, and there is everything else. And only a fool wastes his life clinging to the latter. Yet we do it every day, don't we? We replay conversations we can't redo. We ruminate over people's thoughts we'll never truly know. We dread outcomes we can't predict or prevent. And the more we resist what is outside our power, the more we suffer, not because of the thing itself, but because of our refusal to let go. This is what Marcus Aurelius was wrestling with when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Not control, not reassurance, but strength. Strength to stand in the face of uncertainty without collapsing. Strength to say, I don't need the outcome to go my way. I only need to meet it well." This is not passivity. It's not apathy. It's radical clarity. Let's break this down. What can you control? Your perception of events, your judgment of what they mean, your response to what happens, your actions in the present moment, your character and chosen values. That's it. Everything else, what people think, how they react, the timing of events, the outcomes of your efforts, is external. To the untrained mind, this is terrifying. But to the Stoic, it is liberating. Because now, your life is no longer chained to outcomes. It's measured by integrity. You don't need to control everything. You only need to control yourself. Practical application, the control audit. When you feel yourself spiraling into overthinking, perform a Stoic audit. Take the thought, whatever it is, and ask, is this within my control? If yes, focus your energy. If no, release your grip. Let's say you're waiting to hear back from someone important. A job, a person, a diagnosis. Your mind will naturally start scripting the future. What if they say no? What if they don't respect me? What if I messed up? But ask yourself, can I control what they say? Can I control when they respond? No. But can you control your preparation, your composure, how you use this waiting period? Absolutely. This is where overthinking turns into discipline, when you reroute the energy from what's uncontrollable to what's essential. Stoic thought shift from outcome to excellence. Seneca said, "We should always be asking ourselves, is this something that is, or is not, in my control?" But the modern mind rarely does this. We tie our peace to whether things work out. But the Stoic ties peace to whether they lived with excellence, regardless of how things unfold. You write the best letter you can. You give the best effort in your work. You speak with courage and clarity. And when the result comes, you say, "This is beyond me now. Let fate do what it will." That's not weakness. That's freedom. You no longer live in mental chains. Mental training. The practice of pre-acceptance. One way the Stoics strengthened their resilience was through a practice called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They imagined things going wrong, being betrayed, failing, losing, falling ill, not to feed fear, but to prepare their mind ahead of time. So when hardship came, they weren't shocked. They had already accepted that life would not always follow their plan. This mental rehearsal is the opposite of overthinking. Overthinking is fear without strategy. Premeditation is preparation without illusion. Here's how to practice it. Each morning, ask yourself, what could go wrong today? How would a wise person respond to that? You're not predicting disaster. You're training your mind to respond with reason when emotion surges. Because life will happen as it will, but how you meet it, that is yours. Closing reflection. True power lies in Release Overthinking is an attempt to control the uncontrollable. It's a form of self-torture disguised as intelligence. But once you understand what belongs to you and what never did, you begin to reclaim your strength. The Stoics didn't stop caring. They just stopped clinging. They trained themselves to say, "I have done my part. Now I surrender what is not mine to hold." That is not giving up. That is growing up, philosophically. So next time you feel the spiral begin, remember, you don't need to know how it will all turn out. You only need to show up fully, right now. You are not here to control. You are here to embody wisdom. That is the Stoics' path, and that is the end of overthinking. Don't stumble over something behind you. Seneca. The mind is like a crowded room, noisy, restless, and filled with echoes. Thoughts stack on top of each other, creating mental clutter. Memories bump against predictions. Doubts twist themselves around hopes. A small concern morphs into a giant shadow because it was never pulled into the light. And before you know it, you're no longer thinking, you're spinning. This is the silent architecture of overthinking. It doesn't come from a single loud thought, but from the accumulation of unexpressed thoughts. And unless you learn to release the pressure, the mental noise will become unbearable. That's why the Stoics journaled. Not to be poetic, not to vent, not to impress anyone, but to filter the mind. To untangle the invisible web of assumptions, emotions, and impressions, before those things grew too powerful to confront. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, didn't write meditations for an audience. He wrote it for himself. His journal was his training ground, a private temple where he examined his judgments, reaffirmed his values, and sharpened his inner clarity. In a world of war, betrayal, duty, and death, Marcus turned to the quiet ritual of writing, not as escape, but as preparation. So what about you? If you're trapped in a cycle of overthinking, the first and most powerful step is this: take the thought out of your head and put it on paper. Why? Because the mind is not meant to hold everything. It's meant to process, not to store. And when you write something down, you are doing what the Stoics did, making the abstract visible. A vague fear, once written, can be questioned. A tangled thought, once externalized, can be examined. And an emotional storm, once observed, can be weathered. Let's explore how to do this with Stoic precision. Step 1. Create a time and place. Seneca said, "Each day, I examine my character. I review what I have done, what I have thought, and how I could improve." This wasn't occasional, it was daily discipline. To journal like a Stoic, you must treat it like any other act of training. Not a random activity, but a deliberate ritual. Ideally, at the same time each day, morning to set the tone, or evening to reflect and release. Create a space where your mind knows. This is where I get clear. Marcus. Step 2. Ask simple, penetrating questions. The Stoics didn't write essays. They asked hard questions. They challenged their assumptions. Here are a few Marcus would ask himself, and that you can begin with: what am I afraid of? And is that fear rational? What judgment am I making about this situation? What part of this is within my control? If I die tomorrow, would this still matter? What virtue do I want to embody today? These questions cut through the fog. They bring you back to what matters. And more importantly, they stop the mind from running wild with unexamined impressions. Step 3. Name the thought to tame it. One of the most important Stoic insights is that emotion cannot rule you unless you let it go unnamed. Overthinking is often just unprocessed emotion with no direction. When you write a sentence like, I'm afraid they don't respect me, or I feel like I failed. You turn raw experience into language, and language gives shape. Once a fear is named, it can be reasoned with. Once a thought is isolated, it can be refined or discarded. This is the difference between being consumed by thought and commanding thought. Step 4. Organize the inner world. The Stoics believed in order, not just in the world, but within the soul. Journaling helps you build an inner hierarchy. What matters most? What can be let go? What needs to be acted on? What simply needs to be seen? For example, write out the situation. List what you know versus what you're assuming. Circle what's within your control. Strike through what isn't. This isn't just writing, it's mental architecture. You are rebuilding the scaffolding of your thinking to support peace, not panic. Step 5. Reflect, don't ruminate. There's a difference between journaling and emotionally dumping. The Stoics weren't interested in wallowing. Their writing was pointed, focused on growth, clarity, and the alignment of thought with virtue. So end your journaling session with reflection. What is the lesson here? How would a wise person respond? What can I let go of right now? This last question is critical, because the goal isn't just to write, it's to release. To let go of what no longer serves you. To put it on the page and leave it there. Why it works. The brain needs a mirror. Think of your journal as a mirror for the mind. When you overthink, your thoughts are swimming in murky water. You can't see what's what. You feel everything but understand nothing. Journaling clears the water. It reflects your inner world with precision and stillness. And once you can see your mind, you can shape it. You begin to choose what to feed, what to correct, what to discard. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, at first the overthinking slows, the volume lowers. The inner critic weakens, and in its place, clarity. Final thought. Most people try to outthink their thoughts, but you are not supposed to carry them all at once. The Stoics knew this, so they wrote, daily, honestly, ruthlessly. And so can you. Each journal entry is not just a page in a notebook. It's an act of rebellion against mental chaos. It's you saying, I will not be ruled by noise. I will meet my mind and master it. So pick up the pen, face the page, and free yourself, one word at a time. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. Marcus Aurelius. You don't find peace by waiting for the world to calm down. You find peace by training your mind to remain calm within it. Stillness is not something you stumble upon. It's not a mood or a lucky break in the chaos of life. It is a skill earned through repetition, built with intention, and maintained through inner discipline. But most people misunderstand stillness. They imagine it as silence, as escape, as the absence of thought. So they wait for the world to be quiet before they can feel okay. They wait for their problems to resolve before they can breathe. They wait for their mind to stop racing, hoping, wishing, begging for peace. And because that silence rarely comes, they continue to suffer. But the Stoics approached stillness very differently. They didn't wait for peace. They practiced it. They trained for it, daily, like a warrior trains with his weapon, because they knew, if you don't train the mind to be still on command, it will move on impulse. It will chase every fear. It will amplify every doubt. It will follow every craving, every trigger, every thought, until you no longer live with intention, but in constant reaction. If a person doesn't know to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Seneca. The same is true with the mind. If it is directionless, it becomes dangerous, not because it is broken, but because it is untamed. Stillness is not empty, it's focused. One of the greatest misunderstandings in modern life is the idea that stillness equals doing nothing. That peace means emptiness. But this isn't true. Stillness in the Stoic sense is not the absence of thought. It is the presence of clarity. It is the ability to let thoughts come and let them go without grabbing onto every one. It is the ability to sit with uncertainty without rushing to fill it, to notice an emotional wave and not be carried away by it, to stay with a difficult moment, not avoid it, not numb it, but meet it. This is not something you wait to feel. It's something you must train, like breathwork, like posture, like presence. How to train stillness daily practice. Let's break this into practical training, because stillness is not poetic, it's procedural. It begins with building a new relationship with your inner world. 1. Start small and start daily. Even 1 minute of quiet, deliberate attention is more valuable than an hour of passive silence. Begin each day with 3-5 minutes of focused stillness. Sit down, back straight, breathe deeply and slowly. Let the thoughts come, and instead of following them, observe them. The goal is not to clear your mind completely. That's not control, it's coercion. The goal is to witness your thoughts without judgment or attachment. That's the Stoic way. Watch your own mind, the way a general observes his troops. Aware, prepared, unmoved by panic. 2. Pair stillness with physical ritual. The Stoics believed in embodiment. They understood that the state of the body influences the state of the mind. Simple physical rituals, done with full attention, can become gateways to stillness. Making your bed, slowly. Washing your hands, mindfully. Drinking a warm cup of water without distraction. Walking without headphones. Feeling your steps, your breath, your weight. These aren't chores. They're anchors. They bring you back to the body, back to the now, back to the moment where overthinking cannot survive. 3. Withdraw into the inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about an inner retreat, a mental place of quiet he could enter, no matter how loud the world became. People seek retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea, in the mountains, but nowhere can a person find a retreat more full of peace than his own mind. This is the inner citadel, and you build it by returning to your values, by rehearsing your principles, by strengthening the voice of reason until it becomes louder than the voice of fear. You don't need to run away, you simply go inward. You tell yourself, nothing outside my mind can control me. I am disturbed only by my judgments, and those I can change. This practice doesn't remove problems, it removes delusion, the idea that you must be tossed around by every wave. Stillness teaches you how to stand in the water without drowning in it. 4. End each day in stillness. The day's noise builds residue, mental tension, emotional debris, fragments of moments never fully processed. That residue fuels overthinking at night. You must end the day the way a Stoic soldier would end his post, by cleaning his sword. Ask yourself before sleep, what disturbed me today? What did I allow to control me? Where did I forget what I can control? What can I let go of now? You don't need to solve everything before bed. You only need to return to inner alignment. Stillness at night becomes the bridge between today's battle and tomorrow's clarity. The world will never be fully calm. People will be unpredictable. Plans will fall apart. Fears will whisper in the quiet hours. But none of that can disturb a mind trained in stillness. Stillness is not reserved for monks on mountains. It is practiced in traffic, in conflict, in grief, in joy. It's the decision you make to return again and again to the present moment, to your breath, to the only thing that was ever truly yours, your mind. So train it. Not to silence every thought, but to stand unmoved by them. Not to control the world, but to remain in control of yourself, no matter what the world does. This is what the Stoics mastered. This is what you are mastering now. Stillness is not a place you reach. It's the person you become.